Alright guys, this is the beginning of the mock-up. So I got it all redneck together. There's about 350, maybe a little bit more pounds of brick there. And then I got the tranny strapped up in the frame, and I got all the weight on the springs. So I'm just trying to figure out all my shackle angle and everything before I even tack anything on. So I got the front hanger clamped, and it's pretty close. So with the shackle, it's just slightly back from vertical, which is what you want. But it's hard to know because obviously the hanger here, or the spring there, is kind of binding up on that 2x4. It's not really sliding like it should, so it might be getting hung up a little bit. So I'm just going around and doing that, trying to figure out all my locations for holes. I just got that one marked there, and then the front hanger is flush right now, flush with the front of the frame. So that's what I've always done in the past, is just clamped everything together, get the weight on the truck. But it's hard when you don't have a motor in or a tranny, so you kinda gotta redneck ghetto rig it together to get some weight in there. And it's just a guesstimate. And another thing is these springs settle over time, so the shackle angle is gonna move, the spring will flatten out and the shackle angle will move back, so you gotta account for that too. So I'm thinking it's pretty close right there, and that tube is centered in that body mount, and the hanger's flush, and these are 4-inch springs. And Traeger tells you to weld that hanger like 3/4 inch forward, which I don't know. I think these springs are a little bit longer than the 3-inch, but right there actually looks pretty good. But it's hard to know without getting the weight on the truck and actually getting those springs to flatten all the way out. So at this point it's kind of a guess. I'm just going to tack that hanger up in there until I actually get the motor and tranny in and kind of let some weight on them for a little bit, and then I'll fully weld it in. So if it does need to move, it's not that big of a deal. So just an update for you guys. Alright guys, little update. It's kind of hard to film all this while you're doing it. So I went through and cut the holes. That side's already done. And 4-wheel drive, I don't remember 2-wheel drive having this, but there's a brace inside of the frame on the 4-wheel drive that you got to cut through. And I'm doing all this with a hole saw. It's a, about the more expensive one is like a Milwaukee or something, but I've got it almost all done and it's still cutting pretty good. Get a couple extra pilot bits, because every once in a while that saw will grab and you'll bend it or break that bit. So what I'm doing to get that inner brace out is just run the hole saw through it, but you gotta be very careful and just use very minimal pressure on it or it will grab, and just keep the drill slow. I'll show you this side. I already got the brace out of that side, and then I'll show you guys a sweet trick I found to make sure everything's straight. And obviously without precision tools and whatever else you use to mark these out when you drill your pilots, they're not going to be exact, and this one was a little bit off, so you're just going to have to grind out one side whatever way you need to move. If you need to come up, you're going to have to grind the bottom of this one or the top of that one just to get the tube to move up. But I'll show you guys how to get that all straight. So I'm going to go through and cut that out. I'll show you guys this. Sorry it's so dark, but I'll show you how to get that brace out. And you kind of want to, when you get your drill up here, you kind of want to aim it straight. If you cut it this way, you're going to have a lot of that brace on the inside sticking into your hole. So keep it this way, straight, like how your axle or your tube would go through that, and just real light pressure on it. Okay, we're most of the way through. I'm going to go on the other side. So I'm pretty close there. You can see the cut there. And there's that brace. So we're all the way through there. And that doesn't look like it's in the way at all. So it runs on either side of the frame across in the inside. So now I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing to make sure those holes are straight through. So when you get the shackles on, they're not at an angle. And it's pretty simple. I'll show you guys what I got. So this is actually metal conduit, 1 inch. And here's the tube, and it fits perfect over that. So you're going to stick both tubes in the frame, and then you're going to want that pipe to go across through the 2 tubes, and that's when you know you're straight, as long as your tubes are drilled in the right spot. You might have to grind a little bit to turn it up or down or one way or the other, but this is a good way to make sure your tubes are welded in straight. So, and you can actually weld, like, you can stick this tube in and weld around these and you know it's not going to move. And last time I did it, I didn't do this. I just had the shackles on, but it melted the bushings, so that's not really a great way to do it. I think this is a lot more accurate, as long as you get a pipe that fits nice and snug over or inside of the tube there. You're good to go. So I'm gonna go mock it up and see where I'm at, and then show you guys what I got to grind, because I know I got to do a little bit. So I'll show you guys that. Okay, so there it is. I got the tube through the frame and this pipe going through, and you can see it's a little bit off. I mean, you're not going to get it perfect first try. So you're going to have to grind one side of that to move that tube over. And just remember, when you're talking 3 feet, there's about 3 feet between this frame. You take a 1/16 off of one of those edges, and it's going to move that quite a bit. So just grind a little bit, check it, grind a little bit more, check it again, and you're probably not going to have to do a whole lot of grinding. I mean, that's not way off. It looks like it's pretty far off, but I'll do a little bit of grinding on it and show you how much I actually take off. Alright, back about 2 minutes later, and as you can see right there, we're right in the center. So that took about a minute. And all I really did was take the hole saw and come in at an angle here and grind the edge of this, and then do the same thing on the other side. And I think it was mainly the inside brace. It was just touching just a little bit, and it wasn't allowing it to move this way. So we should be good there. The other side had a little bit I had to move. So I'm going to go grind that, and we should be able to get this thing tacked in here and put some shackles on it and see where we're at for angle wise. Alright, we got this ready to tack on. So you got to stick the frame tube out 1/4 inch on the outside of the frame, and Trail Gear's instructions aren't very clear. They make it sound like you center it and then push the tube an additional 1/4 inches out. That is not the case. So when you do that, then measure in between the inside of the tubes, and it should be 24 5/8. And you can base it off the front hanger, but you got to be aware of the spacers. These are 3/4 inch, so it's going to be 1.5 inches on either side, or with both sides combined. So 1.5 inches narrower than the inside of your front hanger. So that puts it at 24 5/8. So I'm going to go and tack these on and make sure everything lines up good, and then we can fully weld them in. And then I'm also going to plate on the top of that where that hole is. I got some steel I got to cut up and build a plate for around that, just to strengthen that up a little bit. So I'll show you guys some welding. Still good. Alright guys, working on getting these tubes welded in there. Got a lot of the bottom in, and then I made this plate to go on top above where that hole is up there. So that'll go cover that up, so I'll weld all that in. We got all the insides of the tubes welded up. So I'm gonna go ahead, get these puppies welded in there. It's kind of tricky getting up on top of that thing, and I got this pipe going through it too, which is keeping everything nice and straight, and I'm leaving that in the entire time I weld it, just in case something moves when you're welding it. So it's gonna be nice and straight. So that's a good thing to use. And like I said, that's 1-inch metal conduit, so it's pretty thick and rigid, so it's not really, I mean, the bushings have a lot more play than that does for sure. So even if you're a little bit off, it's probably not going to matter much, but you might as well get it as straight as you can. So get that tube in there and weld it up. Alright guys, we got the plates welded on up there. They didn't turn out too great. Such a pain in the butt to get up there, especially with a TIG. But I don't really have a decent MIG, so that's what we're working with. Kind of hard to see, I guess, but anyway, that plate's welded on up top to cover that hole up. So now I got my front member pretty much figured out, but like I said, it's hard to know without a motor in it. So I actually ended up flipping it around, and it's sticking pretty close to flush, maybe like an 1/8 inch back, and my shackle angle is still pretty vertical. So I'm just going to tack this on and leave it until I get the motor in, all the drivetrain in, and then once it settles a little bit, if I need to move this, it's not going to be a big deal. I'm just going to tack it a little bit so that I can move it. So that's next on the agenda. I got to pull it back off and get everything grinded out. I got most of it done, but still got to do a little bit of grinding on the ends, and then we can get it tacked on there. And it's pretty easy to center it. You just center between the frame, make a mark. You can see my mark right there. I don't have a mark on this side because I flipped it, but then just find the center of your brace, put a mark on it, and then just to be sure, measure here from here to here on both sides, make sure it's even, and then figure out where you want it, forward, backward, and then yeah, just tack it on until you can know for sure with all your weight on the vehicle, and make sure your shackle angle is going to be good before you burn the whole thing in, because then it's a lot more work to get off and move it if you have to. So alright, quick update. We still haven't tacked the hanger in, but we got the whole axle underneath it, got the weight back in, tranny's up, and I'll show you the shackle angle. And this is probably not it's probably not enough weight still, But what I'm kind of doing is going off the body line here back to that, because the whole truck's sitting at a angle, as you'd imagine. So that's how it is. So we're pretty close here, and these springs are going to settle quite a bit still, so I'm going to go ahead and tack that hanger in. Looks like my steering is going to just barely clear, so I'm going to brace that steering box up, the frame. So that's all coming together now.